It was a seemingly ordinary night in Don's diner at the far coast of the country. The truckers were having their meal while chatting with the locals and the servers. Everything was going as usual, since the faces were regular customers of the old substandard establishment. But then the warm atmosphere was disturbed when a stranger walked in with his filthy shoes, leaving a trail of mud on the floor. He was a frail-looking old man, wearing a patched-up coat and a tattered tall hat. He sat at the farthest table while everybody in the diner turned their heads to see the face of this unfamiliar man. Although everybody had felt it, none of them could explain it. But there was a sense of overbearing gloom upon his arrival. His skin was very pale, that it was almost gray, and his sad, hazel eyes were set deep. His long white hair ran below the collars of his coat. The old man seemed really parched and exhausted. His long, skinny fingers were jittering when he laid his hands on the table. The owner's daughter, Beth, which was also the diner's server, reluctantly approached the mysterious stranger. She initially thought that he was a wandering homeless man, and so she served him a hot cup of coffee and a bread to aid his hunger. However, her impression was immediately changed when he began to speak. Despite of his tattered clothes and feeble posture, the old man spoke with sound eloquence and grace. He looked like a homeless beggar, and yet he sounded like a nobleman. Beth was surprised by the manner of his speech, and she asked him what he wanted to eat. However, the response to her simple question was quite puzzling to say the least. The old man ordered a raw steak and a glass of water. For some reason, he also asked if he could borrow a Bible. Due to the irregularity of his demands, he gave a tip to Beth that made her unable to refuse. He handed her a golden coin with a stamp of a symbol that she couldn't recognize. Beth rushed to her father Don, the owner of the diner, and she showed him the golden coin. Don closely inspected it, and he was astonished when he realized that it was indeed real gold. Don frantically ordered the crew of his establishment to give everything that the mysterious old man would ask. He gave them their finest cut of raw meat on a platter, their stored silverwares, and a pitcher of cold drinking water. Unfortunately, there was still one request that they could not grant. Don did not possess a Bible in his establishment. He secretly asked the other regular customers if they happened to have one. Unfortunately, not one of them had it. In fact, Don's diner and the community around it were all non-believers of faith. They did not possess any religious manuscript of any kind, nor believed in any spiritual teachings. The strange old man sighed out of disappointment when they were not able to present a Bible, and one of the truckers named Eddie had decided to assertively speak his mind when he noticed the clear dissatisfaction on the stranger's face. He said that the people there were too busy living their hard lives and had no time to pray. Unexpectedly, the frail old man retorted with a gentle voice and said, "Perhaps your lives wouldn't be too hard if you spare a little time for your faith." There was nothing particularly offensive in his response. However, Eddie was already on the edge ever since the old man showed up in the diner for some reason. He was waiting for an opening to confront him, and their difference in belief became an excuse for him to be aggressive. He stood up from his table and walked towards the stranger with disdain. He asked him where he was from and what he was doing in their place. The old man replied and said that he was from the far south, and he just happened to come across the establishment. He also questioned why he was asking for a Bible, and his response was that of a faithful believer. He stated that there was no particular reason for his request, but no reason was necessary to read the Word of God in any time of the day. Eddie asked him why he didn't bring his own, but the old man just smiled, which irritated him even further. He looked at the raw slice of meat on the platter, and he insultingly asked the man if he would eat an uncooked food. He said that the food would be cooked by divine flames, and Eddie broke out laughing when he heard this response. Eddie kept on mocking the old man and even repeated what he said so the others would hear it as well. While he and the rest of the customers were laughing, the stranger placed his palm above the raw meat and didn't say anything. What happened next left everyone speechless, and Eddie was taken aback. Smoke started emanating from the fresh meat on the platter. Few seconds later, it was already steaming hot and looked properly grilled. The old man began to say grace before cutting a nice piece off the smoking steak. Eddie asked how he did it, and the stranger said that everything was possible if a person had enough faith. Everything about this nameless man was a mystery. The customers started to gather around his table, and he started preaching his belief. However, non-believers couldn't be easily persuaded by a single inexplicable act. The local magician Reno was also in the diner at the time, and he claimed that what the stranger did was nothing but a clever trick. He pulled out a cigarette and lit it up using the flames that suddenly went off right inside his wallet, and he confidently said that combustible devices could be hidden in the sleeves or the smallest pockets. The old man had his sleeves down to his wrists, and Reno assumed that he was hiding something under it. However, what he did next was nothing short of a miracle and cannot be replicated by any form of petty parlor trick. Even a non-believer would be familiar with one of the most popular miraculous acts in the Christian Bible, and the old man did exactly that right before their eyes. With a clear glass pitcher, he turned the water into wine as he was pouring it in his cup. The colorless water suddenly turned into a liquid with a deep red hue, and he rolled up his sleeves prior to the act in order to eliminate their doubts. Reno claimed that he must have slipped in some food coloring in the water, and so the old man let the customers have a sip. They were all profoundly amazed when they confirmed that it was indeed an actual red wine. Reno didn't know what else to say, since he was proven wrong right there and then. Some of the customers started to believe the mysterious stranger's proclaimed faith because of his miraculous acts, but there were still a few others who remained unconvinced. But what happened next had forced the rest of them to have some faith for their own sakes. All of a sudden, the stars disappeared from the sky. A huge storm was brewing, and they were immediately alarmed when they saw the tail of an upcoming hurricane that was about to land in the area. The winds were so strong that the hurricane was already pulling in and lifting off the benches and the tarps outside the diner. Don frantically told the customers to get away from the windows in case they would shatter. Everyone was panicking, but the mysterious stranger remained perfectly calm amidst the screams. When the people around him were completely helpless, he claimed that the sky would calm down if they believed that it will. On a very timely manner, he strongly suggested them to believe in God and have some faith. And out of desperation, the customers accepted his notion and began to pray for help. Just as what the old man had stated, the violent winds calmed down as the dark clouds miraculously cleared out. As the non-believers were driven to a corner, they had no choice but to cling on to faith for hope and safety. When their prayers were answered, even the hard-headed individuals started to believe. Little did they know, everything that happened up to that point was a part of the mysterious stranger's clever ploy. The customers were expressively grateful to him for introducing his belief to their neighborhood. However, he was not a man of God at all. Few seconds later, the lights inside the establishment suddenly flickered. The mysterious old stranger stood up from his table with a sickening grin on his face. When the people in Don's diner started to believe in God, they were bound to believe in the devil as well, and that was his goal all along. He asked for a Bible to confirm that they didn't have any, and he intentionally ordered a raw meat and water to astound them with his supernatural abilities. His tattered clothes and frail demeanor were meant to garner sympathy, and his gold coin was a display of wealth that they didn't have, as well as to display a sense of humility. He remained humble and feeble, but he also gave them a reason to envy and be curious. His strong faith was a misdirection to his actual objective. He needed them to believe in God so they would also believe in him. In order to denounce their faith, they had to have one to begin with, and as they were fooled to believe in the power of spirituality, he played them on the palm of his hands. The old man grew taller and even paler, and his eyes turned all black while his teeth became jagged. When he finally removed his tall hat from his head, the horns underneath it were revealed. The stranger was not a man of faith, but the devil himself. The devil could not directly interfere with the lives of humans, but he could manipulate events and influence them to do his bidding. The customers tried to run away, but the doors were locked and the windows could not be broken. As they ran away and screamed in terror, the devil placed 3 gold coins on the table and made an offer. With a very low voice that reverberated in the entire room, he said, "A gold coin for an ear, 2 for a pair of hands, and 3 for a head." Despite of the deafening screams and turmoil, they heard his words clearly, and they knew what he meant. While some of them were still desperately trying to break the windows, the others suddenly stood still and looked at each other. The terrified customers couldn't believe that the others were considering to take the devil's offer, and the first one to initiate was none other than Don. The owner of the establishment ran back to the kitchen and returned with a knife in his hand. He pinned down the magician Reno on top of the table and asked for his ear as if it was nothing. The trucker Eddie followed his lead and aimed for another customer's pair of hands, but the person who unexpectedly started the bloodbath was the calm and composed Beth. She aggressively came out swinging with a butcher's blade in attempt to take someone's head. Don's diner was turned to hell as some of the people submitted to the devil's will while the others were desperately trying to defend themselves. The floor was covered in blood while the posing stranger calmly watched the chaos unfolding right before him. With a very satisfied grin on his face, he kept on flipping the coins as he waited for the person that would claim it.